Welcome to the third talk on the immune system. Today, what I would like to talk to you about is the anatomy of the immune system and what gets done where, as well as vaccinations. So let's get started. Let's start by taking a deeper look at the anatomy of the immune system. The first thing I want to talk about are the lymph vessels, or the lymphatic system, which are these vessels that run throughout your entire body, and they're a one-way circulatory system in a sense, in that they take lymph fluid, which is interstitial fluid, and they move it from the cells back to the circulatory system and clean it along the way. There are filters all along the way that do the cleaning. For example, your tonsils and your adenoids clean up material that enters your body through the respiratory system. The Peyer's patches in the small intestine and the large intestine act to remove debris and antigen producing material that enters through your gastrointestinal system. And then similarly, the spleen and the lymph nodes, the nodes all along the lymph vessels, act as filters to remove and destroy debris. The lymph nodes themselves are locations where the antigens and debris can meet T cells and other white blood cells that are going to either recognize the antigen and start the adaptive immune response, or just destroy material and break it down into its building block molecules. And then finally, we have the producers, the bone marrow stem cells that produce all the different kinds of blood cells. In addition, we have the thymus, where T cells go to mature, and the spleen, where B cells go to mature. So those are both important organs in your immune system. The lymphatic system is part of the circulatory system because it consists of these vessels, the nodes, and the organs that carry this clear fluid called the lymph. And here you can see it in green in the picture. And the fluid that leaks from blood vessels is known as interstitial fluid, is collected in the lymph capillaries and then filtered to remove dead cells and microbes. And the clean fluid is returned to the circulatory system. And the way it moves is by muscle contraction and one-way valves that prevent backflow, much like the venous system. And the fragments of bacteria and bacteria, viruses, and fungi themselves are all destroyed in the lymph nodes. And finally, the lymph is returned to the bloodstream and into two large veins under the collarbones. And you can see that connection right here. And they're going to lead to the superior vena cava. Now, remember earlier we emphasized the entry and exit points from the circulatory system. These are the places where pathogens are most likely to enter the body. So the lymph system is really well developed in these places. There are lymph nodes concentrated near these points of entry, such as near the throat and the lungs and near the intestines, as we've already highlighted. The tonsils and the adenoids filter pathogens and debris from the respiratory system. The Peyer's patches and the appendix filter debris and antigens in the digestive system. The lymph contains white blood cells as well, and these often stay in nodes or roam around the system looking for antigens. These cells congregate in lymph nodes where they are likely to encounter antigens. And to me, I always imagine that lymph nodes look like that famous bar scene in Star Wars where there are all sorts of unsavory characters. And there among them are the law, the T cells in this case. And they've come ready for trouble. That's the way I imagine the lymph nodes. So let's go on and discuss vaccinations, an amazing technology that humans have figured out. Let's talk about what a vaccination does, as well as why some people are against them. The Chinese realized 1,000 years ago or more that treating people with mild forms of smallpox would prevent later infection with more virulent strains. The idea had reached Turkey by the late 17th century. However, in the West, it wasn't the idea that you could gain immunity from a non-virulent strain of a virus didn't get understood until it was observed that milkmaids, women who milked the cows, didn't contract smallpox if they had already had cowpox. In other words, cowpox gave them immunity. And a British physician named Edward Jenner knew about this, and so he, and I'm not making this up, rubbed the pus from a cowpox lesion into the cut of a small boy. Okay, little unethical. A few months later, he took the same boy, cut him again, and rubbed him with smallpox. Really unethical. But the boy did not get sick. So he proved to himself that the cowpox actually gave immunity from smallpox, which is a horrible disease. So this is credited with being the first vaccination in Western medicine, although, as I said, the Chinese had been doing this for maybe 1,000 years at that point. The word vaccination is actually from the Latin word for cow, and it is a tribute to the role that cowpox played in the development of vaccines. So why do vaccinations work? You've probably figured it out. The cowpox must have had an antigen that is identical to or very similar to that of smallpox. And so the boy inoculated with cowpox had a primary immune response to it, and thus had memory B and memory T cells. And they mounted a strong and very effective antibody response when he was exposed to smallpox. A vaccine is a substance that contains the antigen of a pathogen. So that's what a vaccine is, contains the antigen of a pathogen. This causes your immune system to produce memory cells that can mount a rapid antibody response on second exposure. In order that the patient doesn't get sick now, the virus has to be non-virulent, which means not able to cause an infection. There are 4 ways that pathogens can be made non-virulent. First, you can just take bacteria and viruses and kill them and then expose the immune system to them, and they'll go through the whole process of making memory T and memory B cells, and then you will have effective immunity. 2, strains of the virus or the bacteria can be weakened, it's called attenuated, in the lab, and they will either cause no illness or only a mild form of it, but they once again get the immune system to do its adaptive immune response. 3, a vaccine is made with parts of the pathogen that can't contain the antigen, but not the whole pathogen, so the pathogen can't actually attack your cell, but the immune system sees the antigen, creates memory B and memory T cells. And D, in cases where the pathogen produces a toxin that is a poison, this protein can be rendered harmless in the lab and then used as an antigen to evoke a primary immune response. That's pretty impressive. The amazing thing about vaccinations is they work. Measles, 894,000 cases in 1941 before there was a vaccination. 500 cases in 1996. Diphtheria, 207,000 cases in 1921 before a vaccination was available. 1 case in 1996. Mumps, 152,000 cases in 1968. 600 cases in 1996. So you can see these diseases haven't been eradicated, but their ability to affect the human population has been severely reduced by vaccinations. Now, you may have heard of anti-vaxxers, people who are against vaccinations and they believe that they are harmful or dangerous. And they are a very loud group, and they have the ear of some important people. All their claims have been scientifically debunked. In other words, if you look at the science of their claims, there's not one thing that they have right. For example, the original paper that claimed a link between autism and vaccination relied on falsified data that was subsequently showed to have been made up by the researcher. The paper has been withdrawn from publication, and its author had his medical license revoked. And yet that paper still is cited as proof that autism and vaccination are linked to each other. A subsequent study has not found any link between the two, and these studies have been done by people who have no interest in vaccination from a financial point of view. It's also been claimed that vaccinations weaken a person's immune system, but they don't do that. They utilize the immune system to prevent disease. And in fact, the argument doesn't really make sense because it doesn't understand the basic science of the immune system, since adding memory cells actually strengthens the immune system. It doesn't weaken it. Your immune system is made to have memory cells added to them. Many anti-vaxxers are suspicious of government and or large corporations, which personally I think are reasonable fields, but they don't frankly understand the beauty of the science and what's going on here. And they're responding to bad government and the sort of normal actions of large corporations in an unreasonable way. And I've provided you with a website where you can find a good summary of anti-vaxxer claims. So click on that if you're interested in learning more about that. Vaccinations provide what we might want to call herd immunity. Some individuals in our society cannot be vaccinated. For example, a pregnant woman, if she hasn't been vaccinated pre-pregnancy, can't be vaccinated. Infants can't be vaccinated until they're a certain age. And immunocompromised people can't be vaccinated at all. So all these individuals are prone to getting these diseases. But if a sufficient percentage of the population is immunized, then these people get a certain amount of protection because the disease cannot be spread easily from one person to the other in the population. This is called community immunity. I like that term, or herd immunity. And it is what we strive for in public health. If people don't vaccinate their children, then herd immunity becomes much less effective. And these vulnerable individuals are much more likely to get sick and have dire consequences. In our next class, we will be looking at other issues in immunity. The immune system is incredibly important in numerous issues about public health and in numerous issues that surround our daily life, as we now know, living through the COVID-19 crisis. Some of the things I want to talk to you about in the next talk are transplantation of organs, how the immune system handles that, allergies, why the immune system creates them, autoimmune disease, what that is, leukemia, which is cancer of the white blood cells, HIV, and why you can get the same virus more than once. So please take a careful look at this video and come to the next class with questions.